The rain hammered against the windows of Murphy's diner like angry fists, each drop creating a symphony of chaos that matched the storm brewing inside Maya Johnson's heart. She wiped down the same table for the third time, her movements mechanical after 12 hours on her feet. The red vinyl seats were cracked and patched with duct tape, the floors worn thin from decades of foot traffic. But this place was her lifeline in a city that seemed determined to crush her dreams. Maya glanced at the clock hanging crooked above the coffee machine. 11:47 p.m. Just 13 minutes until her shift ended, and she could drag her exhausted body back to the studio apartment she shared with her 7-year-old daughter, Emma. The apartment where the heat had been shut off 3 days ago because she couldn't make the utility payment on time. Again. The diner was nearly empty except for old Mr. nursing his fourth cup of coffee in the corner booth, and a trucker named Randy who always ordered the same thing, mashed potatoes and extra gravy. Maya had memorized every regular customer's order in the 8 months she'd worked here, along with their stories, their troubles, and their small victories. It was one of the few things that made this job bearable. She tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear and checked her reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, evidence of the sleepless nights she spent studying for her nursing degree when she wasn't working at the diner or taking care of Emma. 3 jobs, she reminded herself. Waitressing at Murphy's, cleaning offices downtown before dawn, and weekend shifts at the grocery store. All to pay for school, rent, food, and Emma's asthma medication that insurance barely covered. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya looked up to see a man stumble inside. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive-looking navy suit that was now soaked and disheveled. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and even from across the room she could see he was breathing hard, as if he'd been running. "Welcome to Murphy's," Maya called out, forcing her tired voice to sound cheerful. "Sit wherever you'd like." The man didn't respond immediately. He stood in the doorway, looking around the diner with wide, unfocused eyes. Something was wrong. Maya had developed a sixth sense about people after years of working in customer service. You learned to read the signs of trouble quickly. This man wasn't just wet from the rain, he was sweating, his face pale and drawn. He made his way to a booth near the window, moving carefully as if each step required tremendous effort. Maya grabbed a menu and a glass of water, approaching his table with the practiced smile she'd perfected for difficult customers. "Rough night?" she asked gently, setting the water down in front of him. Up close, she could see he was probably in his late 30s or early 40s, with sharp features and expensive clothes that screamed money. His watch alone probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. The man looked up at her, and she was startled by the intelligence in his gray eyes, even clouded as they were with obvious distress. "You could say that," he managed, his voice hoarse. "Could I just get some coffee? Black." "Of course." Maya studied his face for a moment. His skin had a gray pallor that she recognized from her nursing textbooks and her brief stint volunteering at the county hospital. "Are you feeling all right, sir? You look a little." "I'm fine," he said quickly, but even as the words left his mouth, he pressed a hand to his chest and winced. A thin sheen of sweat had broken out across his forehead despite the cool temperature in the diner. Maya's training kicked in immediately. She'd only completed 2 years of her nursing program, but she'd learned enough to recognize the warning signs. The pallor, the sweating, the chest discomfort, the shortness of breath, these weren't just symptoms of a stressful day. "Sir, I think you might be having a heart attack," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice calm and steady. "We need to call 911. The man shook his head vigorously. No doctors, no hospitals. I just need to sit here for a minute. Please, just the coffee." Maya felt her pulse quicken. In her nursing classes, they'd talked about patients who medical emergencies, especially men who saw seeking help as a sign of weakness. But she couldn't just ignore what she was seeing. "What's your name?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. "Does it matter?" he replied, but after a moment added, Richard Blackwood." The name meant nothing to Maya, but she filed it away. "Richard, I'm Maya. I'm studying to be a nurse, and I know what I'm looking at. You're having cardiac symptoms. This isn't something you can just wait out." Richard laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Trust me, a hospital is the last place I want to be right now. There are people, complications." He looked toward the window, and Maya followed his gaze. For a moment, she thought she saw a black sedan parked across the street, but it was hard to tell through the rain and darkness. "I don't care about complications," Maya said firmly. I care about keeping you alive. Let me call an ambulance. No, Richard's voice was stronger now, more authoritative. I appreciate your concern, but I know what I'm doing. Maya studied his face. She'd dealt with stubborn patients before during her clinical rotations. Sometimes you had to work with them rather than against them. Okay, no ambulance right now, but let me get you some aspirin and you're going to let me monitor your symptoms. Deal. Richard looked surprised by her compromise but nodded slowly. Deal. Maya hurried to the first aid kit behind the counter, her mind racing. She grabbed aspirin and returned to Richard's table, where she found him slumped forward, his breathing more labored. Richard, stay with me, she said, immediately checking his pulse at his wrist. It was rapid and irregular, definitely not good. Take these aspirin and chew them slowly. As Richard followed her instructions, Maya's eyes swept over him again. His expensive suit, the way he carried himself despite his obvious distress, the mention of complications and people he was avoiding, this wasn't just any customer. But right now, none of that mattered. He was a human being in medical distress, and she was going to help him. Tell me about the pain, she said, sitting back down across from him. Scale of 1 to 10. Maybe a 7, Richard admitted, his voice slightly slurred. Feels like someone's sitting on my chest, left arms tingling. Classic heart attack symptoms. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Richard, we really need to get you to a hospital. I understand you're worried about something, but if you don't get proper medical care, those other problems won't matter. Richard met her eyes, and for a moment his mask of control slipped completely. She saw fear there, raw and honest. You don't understand. There are people who want me dead. If I go to a hospital, if there's any record of where I am. Then we'll be smart about it, Maya said without hesitation. But first, you're going to live through tonight. She stood and walked quickly to where Murphy kept the emergency supplies. The diner was required to have an automated external defibrillator and oxygen tank for insurance purposes, though they'd never been used. Maya had been trained on both during her EMT certification course she'd taken the previous summer. When she returned to the table, Richard was holding his head in his hands, his breathing shallow and rapid. Hey, she said softly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Look at me, Richard. He raised his head and she could see the panic setting in. I can't breathe properly, he gasped. Yes, you can, Maya said firmly. We're going to do this together. I want you to breathe with me, okay? In through your nose, slowly, hold it for 3 seconds, then out through your mouth. She demonstrated the breathing technique, and Richard tried to follow along. It took several attempts, but gradually his breathing became more controlled. Maya kept one hand on his wrist, monitoring his pulse, while she used her other hand to text her neighbor Mrs., asking her to check on Emma. That's better, Maya said encouragingly. The aspirin should help with the blood flow, but Richard, I'm not going to lie to you. You need cardiac intervention, and you need it soon. Richard nodded weakly. I know, but if I go to County General or Mary's, there will be records, security cameras. People will know where I am. Maya's mind worked quickly. What about the free clinic on 5th Street? It's run by Dr. Martinez. He used to work at County before he retired. No insurance paperwork, no formal admissions process. Cash only, minimal records. Richard looked at her with surprise. How do you know about that place? I volunteer there sometimes when I can, Maya admitted. Dr. Martinez has been helping me with my studies. He's got an EKG machine and basic cardiac medications. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. For the first time since he'd walked into the diner, Richard looked hopeful. You would do that? Help me get there. Maya didn't hesitate. My shift is over in 5 minutes anyway. But we're not driving. I'm calling Dr. Martinez to meet us there, and we're taking in. You're in no condition to be in a car without medical supervision. She was already pulling out her phone to dial Dr. Martinez's emergency number when Richard grabbed her wrist gently. Why? He asked. You don't know me. For all you know, I could be dangerous. Maya looked at him honestly. Maybe you are dangerous. Maybe you're running from the law or you're involved in something terrible. But right now, you're a man who needs medical help, and I'm someone who can provide it. That's all that matters. Richard stared at her for a long moment, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Most people wouldn't get involved, especially not with someone they don't know. Most people haven't watched their father die of a heart attack while waiting for an ambulance that came 20 minutes too late, Maya said quietly. The words slipped out before she could stop them, carrying with them the weight of old grief and fresh determination. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the rain against the windows and the distant sound of Randy paying his check at the counter. Richard's expression softened, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentler. "I'm sorry about your father." Maya shrugged, trying to shake off the memories. "It was a long time ago, but it taught me that when someone needs help, you don't ask questions first. You help first, and everything else comes later." She stood up and began clearing the table efficiently. "I'm going to clock out and call Dr. Martinez. Can you walk to the door, or do you need me to help you?" Richard tested his strength, pushing himself up from the booth. He was unsteady, but he could stand. "I can make it." Maya nodded and headed to the back office to clock out, her mind already racing ahead to the logistics of getting Richard safely to the clinic. She grabbed her purse and jacket, then called Dr. Martinez's emergency line as she walked back to the dining area. "Dr. Martinez, it's Maya Johnson. I'm bringing in a patient with acute MI symptoms." "Yes, I'm sure." "No, he can't go to a regular ER for personal reasons. We'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and looked at Richard, who was leaning against the booth for support. "Dr. Martinez will meet us there. The clinic is only about 10 minutes from here." As they prepared to leave, Maya noticed that the black sedan she'd glimpsed earlier was definitely still parked across the street. Richard followed her gaze and his jaw tightened. "Friends of yours?" Maya asked quietly. "Hardly," Richard's voice was grim. "We'll need to go out the back." Maya nodded and led him through the kitchen, past Murphy, who was doing inventory and barely looked up, and out the rear exit that led into the alley behind the diner. The rain was still coming down hard, and Maya pulled her jacket around herself. "This way," she said, guiding Richard down the alley toward the main street 2 blocks over. "There's a 24-hour convenience store where we can call a ride." As they walked, Richard stumbled slightly, and Maya immediately moved to support his arm. "Stay with me, Richard. We're almost there." "Why are you doing this?" Richard asked again, his voice barely audible over the rain. "You could get in trouble. Those men back there. They're not just going to give up and go home." Maya thought about Emma asleep at home, about the nursing degree she was working so hard to earn, about the life she was trying to build from nothing. She thought about her father, dying alone in their cramped apartment while she was at school and her mother was working her second job. "Because someone needs to," she said simply, "and right now that someone is me." They reached the convenience store, and Maya quickly called for a ride while Richard leaned against the wall, conserving his energy. The store clerk, a young man with tired eyes, barely glanced at them through the security glass. "5 minutes," Maya told Richard. "How are you feeling?" "Better, actually. Whatever you had me do with the breathing, it helped." Maya felt a small surge of pride mixed with relief. "The aspirin is probably helping too. But Richard, when we get to the clinic, you need to be completely honest with Dr. Martinez about your symptoms. No downplaying, no trying to be tough. Your life depends on accurate information." Richard nodded, then looked at her with curiosity. "You really are going to be a nurse, aren't you?" "If I can afford to finish school," Maya said without thinking, then immediately regretted the admission. She didn't need this stranger knowing about her financial problems. But Richard didn't seem to judge her for it. Instead, he looked thoughtful. "How much longer do you have?" 2 years, Maya admitted, "but it's getting harder to manage everything. Emma, my daughter, she needs me home more and working 3 jobs plus school." She trailed off, wondering why she was sharing so much with someone she'd just met. The ride arrived, and Maya helped Richard into the backseat before giving the driver the clinic's address. As they drove through the empty streets, Richard was quiet, but Maya could see him studying her profile in the reflection of the window. "How old is Emma?" he asked finally. 7, she's got asthma, so medical bills are challenging." Maya kept her eyes focused ahead, uncomfortable with how much she'd revealed, but somehow unable to stop talking to this stranger. There was something about the circumstances, about the intimacy of helping someone through a medical emergency, that broke down normal social barriers. "And her father?" Maya's jaw tightened. "Not in the picture, it's just me and Emma." Richard was quiet for the rest of the drive, and Maya wondered if she'd said too much. But when they arrived at the clinic, he took her hand as she helped him out of the car. "Maya," he said seriously, "whatever happens tonight, I want you to know that what you're doing, it matters. It matters more than you know." Dr. Martinez was waiting for them at the clinic entrance, his gray hair disheveled from being woken in the middle of the night, but his eyes alert and professional. Maya had worked with him enough to know that despite his retirement from formal practice, he was still one of the best cardiac doctors she'd ever met. "This is Richard Blackwood," Maya said as they helped him inside. "Chest pain, shortness of breath, diaphoresis, irregular pulse, started about an hour ago." Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly at her assessment and immediately began hooking Richard up to the EKG machine. Maya assisted, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Definitely showing SD elevation," Dr. Martinez murmured, studying the readout. "Maya, start an IV while I prepare the medications. Mr. Blackwood, you're having a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. We're going to stabilize you, but you'll need to get to a cardiac catheterization lab within the next few hours." Richard gripped Maya's hand as she inserted the IV. "Dr. Martinez, are there any labs that operate?" Discreetly. Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. "There's a private cardiac center about 40 minutes north of here. Dr. Sarah runs it. She's excellent, and she understands that not all patients want publicity about their medical care." "Can you call her?" Richard asked. "Already am," Dr. Martinez said, reaching for his phone. "Maya, excellent work getting him here. Your clinical instincts are spot on." As Dr. Martinez spoke to Doctor in low tones, Maya monitored Richard's vital signs. His color was improving, and his breathing was more stable, but she could see the exhaustion setting in as the adrenaline wore off. "The transport will be here in 30 minutes, Dr. Martinez announced. Doctor will have everything ready." Richard nodded, then looked at Maya. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer." Maya frowned. "What is it?" "After tonight, after I'm better, I'm going to want to thank you properly, to help you the way you've helped me, but that might mean your life changes in ways you can't imagine right now. Are you prepared for that?" Maya stared at him, confused by the intensity of his words. "Richard, you don't owe me anything. This is what anyone would do." "No," Richard said firmly, "it's not. And you're wrong about me not owing you anything. Maya Johnson, you saved my life tonight, and I never forget a debt like that." Before Maya could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air outside the clinic. But these weren't ambulances, they were police cars, and lots of them. Dr. Martinez looked out the window and cursed under his breath. "We've got company, at least 6 squad cars." Richard's face went pale again, but this time it wasn't from his heart condition. "They found me." Maya looked between Richard and Dr. Martinez, her mind racing. "Who found you?" Maya felt the world tilt around her as Richard's words sank in. Blackwood Industries. Even someone working 3 jobs and struggling to pay rent knew that name. It was splashed across billboards downtown, stamped on half the office buildings in the financial district, and mentioned in the business news whenever there was talk about technology innovations or corporate acquisitions. Richard Blackwood wasn't just wealthy, he was one of the richest men in the country. The police sirens grew louder, and through the clinic's front window, Maya could see officers positioning themselves around the building. Red and blue lights painted the walls in frantic patterns, making everything feel surreal and dreamlike. "Murder attempt," Dr. Martinez repeated, his hands still steady as he adjusted Richard's IV drip despite the chaos unfolding outside. "Richard, what exactly are we dealing with here?" Richard's jaw was clenched tight, but Maya could see fear flickering in his gray eyes. "Someone put something in my drink at a charity gala tonight, something that was supposed to look like a heart attack. If I hadn't gotten out of there when I did, if Maya hadn't recognized the symptoms and treated me." He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Maya's nursing training kicked in even as her mind struggled to process this information. What kind of poison mimics cardiac symptoms? "Several possibilities," Dr. Martinez answered grimly. "Digitalis, potassium chloride, certain beta blockers in high doses. Without blood tests, it's hard to say." He looked at Richard seriously. "But the EKG changes we're seeing could be from either actual cardiac damage or chemical interference with your heart's electrical system." The reality of the situation was hitting Maya like a physical blow. She had walked into the middle of something dangerous, something that involved billionaires and murder attempts and police surrounding buildings. This was so far outside her world of double shifts and overdue bills that she felt like she was watching it happen to someone else. A loud voice outside called through a megaphone. "This is Detective with Metro PD. We know you're in there, Mr. Blackwood. We need to talk." Richard tried to sit up on the examination table, wincing as the movement jarred his IV line. "They think I'm the problem," he said bitterly. "3 people are dead, Maya. 3 board members who were supposed to vote on a merger deal tomorrow, and someone wants the police to think I killed them." "Did you?" Maya asked quietly. The question slipped out before she could stop herself, but she needed to know. She needed to understand what she had gotten herself into. Richard met her gaze directly. "No, I was trying to stop the merger, not facilitate it. Someone wanted those board members dead, and they wanted me to take the blame. The poisoning was supposed to kill me too, make it look like a murder-suicide." Dr. Martinez moved to the window and peered through the blinds. "Maya, there's something you should know. There are unmarked cars out there too. This isn't just local police." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Federal agents." "Looks like it," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "Richard, whoever is behind this has serious resources." Richard nodded grimly. "The merger I was trying to stop involves defense contracts worth $12 billion. There are people who would kill to make sure it goes through, and now with 3 board members dead, the remaining votes will push it forward." Maya's head was spinning. An hour ago, her biggest worry had been whether she could afford to keep Emma's asthma inhaler prescription current. Now she was hiding in a medical clinic with a billionaire who was apparently framed for murder, while federal agents surrounded the building. "We need to get you to that cardiac center," Dr. Martinez said firmly. "Politics and murder conspiracies aside, you're still having a medical emergency. Doctor is waiting." "They'll never let us leave," Richard said. "And if they take me into custody, I'll be dead before morning. Someone has put a lot of effort into framing me for this. They're not going to let me live long enough to prove my innocence." Maya looked between the 2 men, her mind racing. She thought about Emma, probably sleeping peacefully while her mother was making decisions that could change both their lives forever. She thought about her nursing degree, her carefully planned future, the safe, predictable life she was working so hard to build. Then she thought about her father, dying alone while help stayed just out of reach. "There's a service exit in the basement," she said quietly. "It leads to the underground parking garage next door. Dr. Martinez, is your car in that garage?" Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. "Level B2, but Maya, if you help him escape, you'll be an accessory to whatever they think he's done." "And if I don't help him get medical care, he might die," Maya replied. "I can live with being wrong about his guilt. I can't live with letting someone die when I could have prevented it." Richard stared at her with something approaching wonder. "Maya, you don't understand the kind of people we're dealing with. If they think you're helping me, they'll come after you too. And Emma." The mention of her daughter made Maya's resolve waver for a moment. But then she remembered Richard's breathing exercises in the diner, the way his heart rate had stabilized when she'd given him the aspirin, the gratitude in his eyes when he realized she was going to help him despite the obvious risks. "Then we make sure they don't think that," Maya said. "Dr. Martinez, how long would it take you to get to the cardiac center if you left right now?" 25 minutes, maybe 30 in this weather." Maya nodded, her plan taking shape. "Richard, I'm going to go out front and talk to the police. I'll tell them you collapsed and that Dr. Martinez had to rush you to County General for emergency surgery. That should buy you enough time to get real treatment." "Absolutely not," Richard said immediately. "Maya, I won't let you lie to federal agents for me. The consequences of you dying are worse than the consequences of me bending the truth," Maya interrupted. "Besides, it's not really lying. You did collapse, you do need emergency treatment, and Dr. Martinez is taking you to get it." Dr. Martinez was already moving, gathering supplies and preparing a portable monitor. "She's right, Richard. And from a medical standpoint, we need to move now. Your enzyme levels could spike at any moment." Richard grabbed Maya's hand as she turned to go. His fingers were warm despite everything he'd been through, and his grip was surprisingly strong. "Maya, listen to me. When this is over, when I prove my innocence and find out who really killed those people, I meant what I said about helping you. But right now, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that if anything goes wrong, if they arrest me and somehow connect you to tonight, you'll call this number." He recited a phone number, making her repeat it back until she had it memorized. "Ask for Jonathan Pierce. Tell him Richard said to use the emergency protocols. He'll protect you and Emma. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Richard, you're scaring me. Good, Richard said seriously. You should be scared. But you should also know that after tonight, you'll never have to worry about money again. About Emma's medical bills, about finishing school, about working 3 jobs just to survive. I keep my promises, Maya Johnson. Before Maya could respond, Dr. Martinez was helping Richard off the examination table and toward the basement stairs. Maya, give us 10 minutes, then go talk to the police. Maya watched them disappear down the stairwell, her heart hammering against her ribs. For a moment, she considered calling out to them, telling them to come back, that she'd changed her mind. This was insane. She was a single mother working as a waitress, not someone who got involved in murder conspiracies and federal investigations. But then she remembered Richard's face when he'd first stumbled into the diner, the way he'd looked like a man who had given up hope. She remembered the grateful squeeze of his hand when she'd helped him breathe through the panic attack, the way he'd looked at her when she'd offered to help him get medical care despite not knowing anything about him. Maya had spent her entire adult life taking care of other people, Emma, her patients during clinical rotations, even the regular customers at Murphy's diner who treated her like a confessor for their problems. Tonight wasn't really different from any other night. Someone needed help, and she was in a position to provide it. She waited exactly 10 minutes, then walked to the front door of the clinic and stepped outside into the rain. Immediately, flashlights blazed in her face, and several officers moved toward her with their hands on their weapons. Hands where we can see them, someone shouted. Maya raised her hands slowly, squinting against the lights. I'm a nursing student. I was helping Dr. Martinez with a patient. A tall woman in a dark suit approached, her badge visible even in the dim light. Agent Sarah, FBI, are you Maya Johnson? Maya's blood ran cold. They knew her name. Somehow they'd already connected her to Richard. Yes. Where is Richard Blackwood, Ms. Johnson? Maya took a deep breath, praying that her voice would remain steady. Dr. Martinez had to rush him to County General. He went into cardiac arrest about 15 minutes ago. Dr. Martinez said there wasn't time to wait for an ambulance. Agent studied Maya's face carefully. You're saying Mr. Blackwood is currently at County General Hospital. That's where Dr. Martinez was taking him, Maya said, which was technically true. Dr. Martinez was taking Richard to get cardiac care, just not at County General. Agent spoke into her radio, and Maya caught pieces of the conversation, something about confirming patient admission and securing the cardiac unit. She realized with growing dread that when the agents discovered Richard wasn't at County General, they'd know she had lied. Ms. Johnson, how did you come to be involved in Mr. Blackwood's medical care tonight? Maya forced herself to maintain eye contact. He came into Murphy's diner where I work. He was having chest pain and difficulty breathing. I have some medical training, so I recognized the symptoms and convinced him to let me call Dr. Martinez. And Dr. Martinez just happened to be available in the middle of the night. He runs a free clinic. I volunteer there sometimes. He gives out his emergency number to students who might encounter situations where someone needs immediate medical help but can't afford a hospital. This was all true, and Maya could see that Agent was having trouble finding holes in her story. But she also saw the moment when the agent realized something was wrong. Agent's radio crackled to life. No patient matching Blackwood's description at County General, no recent cardiac admissions. The agent's expression hardened. Ms. Johnson, I'm going to ask you one more time, where is Richard Blackwood? Maya's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it, but she kept her voice level. I told you, Dr. Martinez was taking him to County General. If he's not there, maybe they went to Mary's instead. Dr. Martinez would have made the best medical decision based on Mr. Blackwood's condition. Search the clinic, Agent ordered. Several officers moved past Maya into the building, and she could hear them opening doors, checking rooms, calling out the all-clear. Maya stood in the rain, water dripping from her hair and soaking through her jacket, trying to calculate how much time had passed. 20 minutes? 25? Was it enough for Richard and Dr. Martinez to reach the cardiac center? Basement's clear, an officer called out. Looks like there might have been recent medical activity down there, some equipment moved around, but no one's here now. Agent stepped closer to Maya, close enough that Maya could see the skepticism in her dark eyes. Ms. Johnson, do you understand that Mr. Blackwood is wanted in connection with 3 murders? That by helping him evade law enforcement, you could be charged as an accessory? I don't know anything about murders, Maya said honestly. I know about a man who was having a heart attack and needed medical help, that's all. And you just happened to risk your career, your freedom, and your daughter's welfare to help a complete stranger. The mention of Emma made Maya's stomach clench with fear, but she forced herself to answer calmly. I took an oath when I started nursing school. First, do no harm. That means you help people who need medical care, regardless of who they are or what they might have done. Agent studied her for a long moment, then stepped back. We're going to need you to come to the federal building for questioning. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, but we need a formal statement about your interactions with Mr. Blackwood tonight. Maya nodded, knowing she didn't really have a choice. Can I call someone to check on my daughter? She's sleeping at home. Agent's expression softened slightly. How old is your daughter? 7. We'll arrange for a welfare check and make sure she's safe. But Ms. Johnson, I want you to understand something. Richard Blackwood is extremely dangerous. If he contacts you again, if he tries to involve you further in this situation, you need to call us immediately. I understand, Maya said, though privately she wondered if Agent was right about Richard being dangerous, or if the real danger lay elsewhere. As they escorted her to a federal vehicle, Maya caught a glimpse of her reflection in the car window. She looked like exactly what she was, a tired waitress who worked too many hours and worried too much about money. But she also saw something else in her reflection, something she hadn't noticed before. She looked like someone who had just made a choice that would change everything. The federal building was an imposing glass and steel structure downtown that Maya had driven past countless times, but never imagined she'd be inside. The interrogation room was exactly like the ones she'd seen in movies, small, windowless, with a metal table and uncomfortable chairs. Agent sat across from her with a digital recorder and a thick file folder. For the record, this is Agent Sarah interviewing Maya Johnson regarding her interactions with Richard Blackwood on the night of October 15th. Ms. Johnson, you understand that this conversation is being recorded? Yes. Tell me everything that happened from the moment Mr. Blackwood entered Murphy's diner. Maya told the truth about everything she could: Richard's symptoms, her medical assessment, the decision to take him to Dr. Martinez's clinic. She left out the details about the black sedan following them and Richard's fears about being murdered, figuring those were his secrets to tell, not hers. Agent asked dozens of follow-up questions, trying to find inconsistencies in Maya's story or evidence that she had known Richard's identity before tonight. But Maya's story held up because most of it was true. Ms. Johnson, what do you know about Blackwood Industries? Just what everyone knows. It's a big technology company. They make software and computer systems, I think. Did Mr. Blackwood mention anything about his business? Any meetings, deals, conflicts with other people? Maya shook her head. He was having a heart attack. We talked about his symptoms and getting him medical help. That's all. After 2 hours of questions, Agent finally leaned back in her chair. Ms. Johnson, I want to give you some advice. Richard Blackwood is not the man you think he is. 3 people are dead because of him, and if he contacts you again, he's going to try to use you. Don't let that happen. What if you're wrong about him? Maya asked quietly. What if he's innocent? Agent's expression was cold. Then he should have stayed and talked to us instead of running. Innocent people don't flee the scene of a crime. Sometimes innocent people run because they're scared, Maya replied. Sometimes they run because they don't think anyone will believe them. Agent stood up, signaling that the interview was over. Someone will drive you home, and Ms. Johnson will be watching. If Mr. Blackwood contacts you, we'll know. As Maya was escorted out of the federal building, she realized that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. She was now connected to a murder investigation. Federal agents were watching her, and somewhere out there, Richard Blackwood was either a killer or a man in terrible danger. But despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that she had just lied to federal agents, Maya didn't regret her choice. She had saved a man's life tonight, and regardless of who Richard Blackwood turned out to be, that was something she could live with. The question was, would she get the chance to live with it? Or had she just painted a target on her back and Emma's by helping the wrong person? Maya arrived home at 5:30 in the morning to find Emma still sleeping peacefully in their shared bed, her dark curls spread across the pillow like a halo. For a moment, Maya stood in the doorway just watching her daughter breathe, grateful beyond words that this part of her world remained untouched by the chaos of the night. Mrs. from next door had left a note saying Emma had slept through the night without any breathing problems, which was a relief since Maya couldn't afford another emergency room visit if her daughter's asthma had flared up. Maya tucked the note away and quietly changed out of her work clothes, which still smelled like the diner and carried traces of the antiseptic from Dr. Martinez's clinic. As she brushed her teeth, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the same face that had looked back at her 12 hours ago when she'd gotten ready for her shift at Murphy's, but somehow everything had changed. She was no longer just Maya Johnson, struggling single mother and nursing student. She was now Maya Johnson, person of interest in a federal murder investigation. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and Maya's heart immediately jumped. But it was just Murphy, her boss at the diner, asking if she could cover an extra shift today since one of the other waitresses had called in sick. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, trying to reconcile the normalcy of work schedules and sick calls with the surreal events of the night. She texted back that she couldn't work today due to a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue. Being questioned by federal agents about a murder case definitely qualified as a family emergency in Maya's book. Emma stirred as Maya slipped into bed beside her, and brown eyes identical to Maya's blinked open sleepily. "Mama, you're home early." "A little early, baby," Maya said softly, smoothing Emma's hair back from her forehead. "How are you feeling? Any trouble breathing last night?" Emma shook her head and snuggled closer to Maya's side. "Mrs. made me soup and we watched cartoons. She said you had to help someone who was sick." "That's right. Sometimes nurses have to help people at strange hours." "Are you a nurse now?" Emma asked with 7-year-old logic. Maya considered the question. After tonight, she wasn't sure what she was anymore. "Not yet, sweetheart. I still have school to finish." They lay together in comfortable silence as morning light began filtering through the thin curtains of their small apartment. Maya tried to push thoughts of Richard Blackwood, an agent, out of her mind, focusing instead on the simple comfort of holding her daughter and listening to the familiar sounds of their neighborhood waking up. But the real world intruded when Maya's phone rang an hour later. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, and for a moment Maya's heart raced, wondering if it might be Richard calling to check in or thank her. But when she answered, it was a woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Ms. Johnson, this is Williams from the dean's office at Metropolitan College. We need you to come in today to discuss your enrollment status." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Is there a problem with my registration?" "We'll discuss that when you come in. Can you be here by 11 o'clock? Yes, I can be there." Maya hung up with shaking hands, her mind immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios. Had the FBI contacted her school? Was she going to be expelled because of her involvement with Richard? How would she explain to Emma that their carefully planned future had just crumbled overnight? She called Mrs. to ask if she could watch Emma for a few hours, then spent the morning trying to prepare for what felt like another interrogation. Maya chose her most conservative outfit, a navy blue dress that she usually saved for job interviews and parent-teacher conferences, and practiced explaining her actions in ways that wouldn't make her sound like an accomplice to murder. Metropolitan College occupied several converted warehouse buildings in the Arts District, and Maya had always loved the campus's blend of historic architecture and modern medical equipment. She'd felt proud every time she walked through the nursing department's doors, knowing that she was working towards something important, something that would give her and Emma a better life. Today, the familiar hallways felt ominous, and Maya noticed several other students looking at her strangely as she passed. Word traveled fast in a small nursing program, and she wondered if everyone already knew about her involvement in whatever story was being told about Richard Blackwood. Dean Williams was a stern woman in her 60s who had always been fair but demanding with her students. Maya had met with her only once before, during orientation, but she remembered the dean's reputation for having zero tolerance for anything that might reflect poorly on the nursing program. "Ms. Johnson, please sit down," Dean Williams said without preamble. Her office was lined with medical textbooks and certificates, and a large window overlooked the campus courtyard where Maya had spent many study sessions. Dean Williams, if this is about last night. It is indeed about last night. The dean pulled out a newspaper and placed it on the desk between them. Have you seen today's morning edition? Maya looked down at the headline and felt the blood drain from her face. Billionaire CEO wanted in triple murder. Nursing student helps him escape police. Below the headline was a photo of Maya being escorted into the federal building, her face clearly visible despite the late hour and poor lighting. A sidebar article was titled, "Who is Maya Johnson?" and contained details about her enrollment at Metropolitan College, her work at Murphy's Diner, and even Emma's school enrollment. How did they get all this information so quickly? Maya whispered, staring at the newspaper in shock. Ms. Johnson, the bigger question is why my nursing student is involved in helping a murder suspect evade federal authorities, Dean Williams said coldly. Do you understand the position this puts our program in? The liability issues alone could shut us down. Maya looked up from the newspaper, her mind reeling. Dean Williams, I was providing medical assistance to someone who was having a heart attack. That's what we're trained to do. I didn't help anyone evade anything. I helped get a patient to appropriate medical care. According to this article, Mr. Blackwood was not found at County General Hospital, despite your claims to federal agents that Dr. Martinez had taken him there. Maya felt trapped. She couldn't explain about the private cardiac center without revealing that she had indeed helped Richard avoid the police, but she couldn't defend her actions without explaining what had actually happened. I told the FBI the truth about what I knew at the time, Maya said carefully. Dr. Martinez made the final decision about where to take the patient based on medical factors I wasn't aware of. Dean Williams studied Maya's face for a long moment. Ms. Johnson, you have been one of our most promising students. Your grades are excellent, your clinical evaluations are outstanding, and your instructors speak very highly of your patient care skills. But I cannot have a nursing student who is connected to a federal murder investigation representing our program. Maya felt her carefully constructed world beginning to collapse. Are you expelling me? I'm placing you on administrative leave pending the resolution of this matter. If you are cleared of any wrongdoing, we can discuss your return to the program. But until then, you are suspended from all classes and clinical rotations. The words hit Maya like physical blows. Without school, she couldn't become a nurse. Without becoming a nurse, she couldn't get a better job. Without a better job, she and Emma would be trapped forever in the cycle of poverty and desperation she'd been fighting so hard to escape. Dean Williams, please, I have a daughter to support. I need this degree. The dean's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, but the college has to protect its reputation and its students. If it helps, I will personally write a letter of recommendation for you if you decide to apply to another nursing program after this matter is resolved. Maya walked out of the dean's office feeling numb. In the space of 12 hours, she had gone from being a student with a clear path to a better future to being a suspended nursing student connected to a murder case. The irony wasn't lost on her that trying to save someone's life had potentially destroyed her own. She was sitting on a bench outside the nursing building, trying to figure out how to explain this to Emma, when her phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Jonathan Pierce, and Maya remembered that this was the name Richard had told her to call if anything went wrong. Ms. Johnson, my name is Jonathan Pierce. I believe Mr. Blackwood mentioned I might be calling you. Maya looked around nervously, suddenly paranoid about who might be listening to her phone calls. Yes, he mentioned you. I understand you've had a difficult morning. The newspaper coverage, your meeting with the dean, these are exactly the kinds of consequences Mr. Blackwood was concerned about. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. How do you know about my meeting with the dean? Are you having me watched? Ms. Johnson, there are people watching you, but they're not working for us. Mr. Blackwood asked me to monitor your safety, which includes keeping track of anyone who might be targeting you because of your involvement last night. Targeting me? What do you mean targeting me? There was a pause, and when Jonathan spoke again, his voice was very serious. Ms. Johnson, the people who tried to kill Mr. Blackwood don't know that their plan failed. They think he died of an apparent heart attack and that the murder investigation will die with him. But if they discover that he survived, they'll want to eliminate anyone who helped him. Maya felt the world spinning around her. Are you saying Emma and I are in danger? I'm saying that Mr. Blackwood has instructed me to make sure you're protected until this situation is resolved. There's a car outside your apartment building right now, and another one outside your daughter's school. My people, not theirs. Maya stood up abruptly, looking around the campus with new eyes. Were there people watching her right now? Federal agents, corporate assassins, private security, how many different groups were keeping track of her movements? Mr. Pierce, I just want my life back. I want to finish school and take care of my daughter and pretend last night never happened. I understand that, and Mr. Blackwood understands that too. But Ms. Johnson, last night did happen, and it saved his life. Now he wants to save yours. What does that mean? It means that your tuition has been paid in full through graduation. It means that your rent is current and your daughter's medical expenses are covered. It means that you don't have to work 3 jobs anymore unless you want to. Maya sat back down heavily on the bench, her legs suddenly unsteady. Mr. Pierce, I don't want charity. I don't want money I didn't earn. This isn't charity, Ms. Johnson. This is payment for services rendered. You saved the life of one of the most powerful men in the country. That service has value, considerable value. The dean suspended me from school. How is paying my tuition going to help if I can't attend classes? Leave the dean to us. By tomorrow morning, you'll be reinstated, and the college will issue a public statement supporting your actions as those of a dedicated healthcare professional who acted appropriately in a medical emergency. Maya stared at her phone, overwhelmed by the casual way this stranger was discussing reshaping her entire life. Mr. Pierce, this is all moving too fast. I need time to think. Of course, but while you're thinking, please remember that accepting Mr. Blackwood's gratitude doesn't just help you, it helps Emma. It means she'll never have to worry about her asthma medication, or whether there's enough food in the refrigerator, or whether her mother is too tired to help with homework because she worked 3 jobs that day. The mention of Emma made Maya's resistance waver. Everything she had done, every sacrifice she had made, had been for Emma's future. Could she really turn down an opportunity to give her daughter the kind of life Maya had always dreamed of providing? What does Mr. Blackwood want in return? Maya asked quietly. Nothing. He wants to help you because you helped him, and because he believes that kindness should be rewarded, not punished. Where is he now? Is he okay? He's recovering well. Doctor performed an emergency angioplasty, and there was minimal damage to his heart muscle. He should make a full recovery. Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. Whatever else was happening, whatever complications had arisen from her involvement, at least Richard was going to be okay. Mr. Pierce, I need to pick up my daughter from school and talk to her about some things. Can we continue this conversation later? Of course, but Ms. Johnson, there is one thing you should know. The FBI believes that Mr. Blackwood is hiding in Mexico or Canada by now. They don't know about the cardiac center, and they don't know that he survived the poisoning. We'd like to keep it that way until we can prove his innocence. So I need to keep lying to federal agents. You need to keep telling them exactly what you told them last night. Dr. Martinez took a patient to get emergency medical care. You don't know where they went or what happened after that. After hanging up with Jonathan Pierce, Maya sat on the campus bench for another 20 minutes, watching other nursing students hurry past with their textbooks and stethoscopes, living the life she had been living just yesterday. Tomorrow, if Jonathan Pierce was telling the truth, she would be back among them, but everything would be different. She thought about Richard Blackwood, recovering in some private medical facility, orchestrating changes to her life from a distance. She thought about Emma, innocently attending 2nd grade while her mother navigated federal investigations and murder conspiracies. She thought about the newspaper article that had somehow obtained detailed information about their lives within hours of her involvement with Richard. Most of all, she thought about the choice she had made in Murphy's diner when she decided to help a stranger having a heart attack. It had seemed so simple at the time, so obvious. You help people who need help. You don't ask questions first. But as Maya walked toward her car to pick up Emma from school, she realized that simple acts of kindness could have extraordinarily complicated consequences, and that sometimes saving someone's life 3 days after the night that changed everything. Maya was standing in the kitchen of an apartment she barely recognized as her own. The refrigerator was full of food, real food, not just ramen noodles and discount bread. Emma's inhaler prescription had been filled at the pharmacy without Maya having to choose between medication and rent money. The heat had been restored, and for the first time in months, their small home felt warm and secure. But Maya felt anything but secure. True to Jonathan Pierce's word, Dean Williams had called the morning after their confrontation to inform Maya that her suspension had been lifted. The college had issued a statement praising her quick thinking and professional medical response in a crisis situation, and Maya was expected back in classes immediately. No explanation was offered for the sudden change of heart, and Maya knew better than to ask for one. The newspaper coverage had shifted too. Somehow, new information had emerged painting Richard Blackwood not as a fleeing murder suspect, but as a potential victim who had narrowly escaped an assassination attempt. Articles now focused on corruption in the defense, contracting industry, and possible corporate murder conspiracies, with Maya's role described as that of a heroic nursing student who provided life-saving medical care. Maya should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt like a puppet in someone else's elaborate performance, and she was beginning to understand the true extent of Richard Blackwood's power. This wasn't just about money. This was about the ability to reshape reality itself, to control narratives and influence institutions with a few strategic phone calls. Emma was at school, blissfully unaware that her mother was wrestling with moral dilemmas far beyond anything covered in nursing ethics classes. Maya had told her daughter only that they'd had some good luck with money, and Emma had accepted this explanation with the easy faith of a 7-year-old who trusted her mother to handle the complicated adult world. Maya was trying to focus on her pharmacology homework when her phone rang. She'd been expecting Jonathan Pierce to call with updates, but the caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. "Maya, it's Richard." Maya's heart jumped at the sound of his voice, deeper and stronger than it had been that night in the clinic. "Richard, are you okay? Should you be calling me?" "I'm fine, better than fine, actually. Doctor says I can expect a full recovery, and yes, this line is secure. Jonathan has made sure of that." Maya sank into her kitchen chair, suddenly feeling the weight of the past few days. "Richard, what's happening? The newspapers, my school, everything's changed so fast I can hardly keep track." "That's why I'm calling. I owe you an explanation, and I owe you a choice." "What kind of choice?" Richard was quiet for a moment, and Maya could hear background noise that sounded like medical equipment. "Maya, everything I told you that night was true. Someone did try to kill me, and they did frame me for those murders. But what I didn't tell you was that I've been investigating the corruption behind that defense contract for months. I have evidence that could send some very powerful people to prison for a very long time." Maya felt a familiar chill run down her spine. "What kind of evidence?" "Financial records, recorded conversations, documented bribes. 3 members of my board of directors were being paid to vote for a merger that would have given a defense contractor access to technology that could be used against American interests. When I discovered the truth, I confronted them privately and gave them a chance to do the right thing. And they tried to have you killed instead." "Along with me, yes. But Maya, here's what you need to know. I'm not going to hide anymore. Tomorrow, I'm turning this evidence over to the Department of Justice. By the end of the week, there will be arrests, trials, and a very public reckoning." Maya felt her stomach clench. "What does that mean for me, for Emma?" "That's your choice. You can step back now, go back to your life, and let me handle this alone. Jonathan will make sure you're protected, and the financial arrangements we've made will remain in place regardless. You saved my life, and that debt is paid in full. Or you can help me finish this. Maya, those 3 board members who were murdered, they weren't saints, but they didn't deserve to die. And there are other people, good people, whose lives will be destroyed if this conspiracy succeeds. I could use someone I trust by my side when I face the media and the courts." Maya stared out her kitchen window at the neighborhood playground where Emma would be playing later that afternoon. The same playground where Maya had spent countless hours worrying about money, about school, about whether she was failing her daughter by working so much that they rarely had time just to be together. "Richard, I'm nobody. I'm a waitress and a nursing student from the wrong side of town. Why would you want me involved in something this big?" "Because you're someone who sees a stranger having a heart attack and doesn't hesitate to help, even when it means risking your own safety. Because you're someone who tells the truth to federal agents even when lying would be easier. Because you're exactly the kind of person who should be involved when powerful people think they can get away with murder. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. If I say yes, what happens to Emma? I can't put her in danger. Emma will be safer than she's ever been. Jonathan's people are the best in the world, and they'll make sure nothing happens to either of you. But more than that, Maya, if we succeed, if we stop these people, Emma will grow up in a world where justice actually means something. Before Maya could respond, she heard the sound of car doors slamming outside her apartment building. Through her window, she could see federal agents approaching the building, the same ones who had questioned her 3 nights ago. Richard, the FBI is here. They're coming to my apartment. I know. Maya, this is part of it. They're not there to arrest you. They're there because I've just informed the Department of Justice that I'm ready to surrender myself and turn over evidence in the murder case. Agent is probably there to ask you to help them contact me. Maya watched as Agent and 2 other agents entered her building. So this is really happening. You're really turning yourself in. Yes, but Maya, I need to know, are you with me? Or do you want to step back and let this happen without you? Maya thought about the past 3 days, about the way her life had transformed seemingly overnight. She thought about Emma, about the future she wanted to give her daughter, about the kind of woman she wanted Emma to grow up believing her mother had been. Most of all, she thought about that moment in Murphy's diner when she'd chosen to help a stranger because it was the right thing to do, despite not knowing where that choice would lead. I'm with you, Maya said quietly. Whatever happens, I'm with you. Thank you, Richard said, and she could hear genuine emotion in his voice. Maya, after tomorrow, nothing will ever be the same. Are you ready for that? I don't think anyone's ever ready for their life to completely change. But yes, I'm ready. The knock on her door was firm and professional. Ms. Johnson, this is Agent. We need to speak with you. I have to go, Maya said. Richard, be careful. You too, and Maya, thank you for everything. Maya hung up and walked to the door, taking a deep breath before opening it. Agent stood in the hallway with the same 2 agents who had been at the clinic, but their demeanor was completely different from the hostile interrogation 3 nights ago. Agent, what can I do for you? May we come in? We have some news about Richard Blackwood that you need to hear. Maya stepped aside to let them enter, noting how they took in the improved state of her apartment with professional interest. The new furniture, the stocked refrigerator visible through the open kitchen door, the general air of prosperity that hadn't been there a week ago. Ms. Johnson, an hour ago, Richard Blackwood contacted the Department of Justice through his attorney. He's prepared to surrender himself and provide evidence that he believes will clear him of the murder charges. Maya tried to look surprised. That's good news, isn't it, if he's innocent? That remains to be seen. But Mr. Blackwood has specifically requested that you be present when he turns himself in. He claims you're the only witness who can corroborate certain aspects of his story about the night of the murders. Maya felt her pulse quicken. What kind of aspects? Agent consulted her notes. The timeline of his medical emergency, his mental state, his physical condition. Mr. Blackwood claims that he was poisoned at the charity gala and that the poison was intended to kill him and make it look like a heart attack brought on by guilt over the murders. And you want me to verify that he was actually having cardiac symptoms. We want you to tell us the truth about what you observed that night. All of it, Ms. Johnson. Because if Mr. Blackwood is lying, if he convinced you to help him fake a medical emergency so he could escape, you could still be charged as an accessory. Maya met Agent's gaze steadily. Agent, I've told you the truth about what I observed. Richard Blackwood was having a genuine cardiac event. His symptoms were consistent with either a heart attack or poisoning. I treated him as a medical emergency because that's what it was. Agent made notes, then looked around the apartment again. Ms. Johnson, it appears your financial situation has improved considerably since we last spoke. Maya had been expecting this question and had prepared an answer with Jonathan Pierce's help. I received a scholarship from a medical foundation that supports nursing students who demonstrate exceptional patient care in emergency situations. Apparently, word about what happened that night reached some people who believe in supporting healthcare education. This wasn't technically a lie. Jonathan Pierce had indeed established such a scholarship retroactively and had funded it with Richard's money. Maya was learning that when you had enough resources, you could make almost any story technically true. Agent didn't look entirely convinced, but she didn't press the issue. Ms. Johnson, when Mr. Blackwood surrenders tomorrow, there will be intense media attention. Are you prepared to testify about your interactions with him, possibly in front of cameras and reporters? Maya thought about Emma, about the quiet life they'd built together, about how dramatically everything was about to change. Then she thought about Richard's words about justice meaning something, about powerful people not being allowed to get away with murder. Yes, Maya said, I'm prepared to tell the truth about what happened. After the agents left, Maya sat in her transformed apartment and tried to process the enormity of what she'd committed to. Tomorrow, Richard Blackwood would surrender himself to federal authorities and present evidence that could bring down a major corruption conspiracy. Maya would be by his side, no longer an anonymous waitress and nursing student, but a key witness in what would probably become one of the biggest corporate crime stories of the decade. She thought about calling in sick to work and to school, about trying to hide from what was coming. But then she remembered Richard's gratitude, the way he'd looked at her in the diner when she'd helped him breathe through his panic attack, the trust in his voice when he'd asked her to stand with him. Maya Johnson had spent her entire adult life trying to build a better future for herself and Emma through hard work, education, and careful planning. Tomorrow, she was going to discover what happened when fate handed you a completely different kind of future, one built not on careful planning, but on a single moment of choosing to help someone who needed help. When Emma came home from school that afternoon, chattering about her art project and a new friend she'd made at lunch, Maya made a decision. She sat her daughter down at their kitchen table and told her, in terms a 7-year-old could understand, that their lives were about to change in some very big ways. Are we in trouble, Mama? Emma asked, her brown eyes wide with concern. No, baby, we're not in trouble. But sometimes when you do the right thing, it leads to big changes that you weren't expecting. Is that bad? Maya pulled Emma into her lap, holding her close and breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's shampoo. Sometimes change is scary, even when it's good change. But we're going to face it together, okay? No matter what happens, we'll take care of each other. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened. Will I still go to school with my friends? For now, yes. But there might be reporters and cameras around for a little while, so we'll need to be careful and stick together. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Maya stood at her kitchen window looking out at the street where Jonathan Pierce's security team maintained their discreet surveillance. Tomorrow would bring federal courtrooms and media scrutiny, and a level of public attention she couldn't even imagine. But tonight, she was still Maya Johnson, mother and nursing student, standing in her warm apartment with a full refrigerator and a sleeping daughter who no longer had to worry about whether there would be money for her asthma medication. Whatever tomorrow brought, Maya thought, it had to be better than the alternative, living with the knowledge that she'd turned her back when someone needed help, that she'd chosen safety over courage when it mattered most. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Thank you for standing with me. Tomorrow we change everything. Maya texted back, see you tomorrow, we've got this. 6 months after the night that changed everything, Maya stood in the graduation ceremony auditorium of Metropolitan College, wearing the crisp white uniform and nursing pin that represented the culmination of years of sacrifice, study, and determination. But unlike her classmates' families scattered throughout the audience, Maya's cheering section included not just Emma and Mrs., but also a billionaire CEO, his head of security, several federal agents who had become unexpected allies, and Dr. Martinez, who had been promoted to head of the college's new emergency medicine training program. The corruption scandal that had begun with Richard's surrender 6 months ago had dominated news cycles for weeks. The evidence he'd provided had led to the arrest of 12 corporate executives, 4 members of Congress, and a deputy secretary of defense. The 3 murdered board members were posthumously cleared of wrongdoing and revealed to have been potential themselves, killed to prevent them from exposing the conspiracy. Maya's testimony during the trials had been crucial, not just because she could verify Richard's medical condition that night, but because her story had humanized what could have been just another abstract corporate crime story. The image of a single mother working 3 jobs to pay for nursing school, stopping to help a stranger having a heart attack, had captured public imagination in a way that financial records and legal documents never could. Maya Johnson, the dean announced, and Maya walked across the stage to accept her diploma. The applause was thunderous, and Maya caught sight of Emma in the front row, beaming with pride and holding a homemade sign that read, "My mama is a nurse." As Maya shook Dean Williams's hand, the dean leaned close and said quietly, "I hope you know how proud we all are of you, not just for your academic achievement, but for the courage you showed when it mattered most." Maya nodded, still somewhat overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. The financial security that Richard's gratitude had provided meant she'd been able to focus entirely on her studies for the past 6 months, achieving the highest GPA in her graduating class. But more than that, the experience of standing up to powerful interests and helping expose corruption had given Maya a confidence she'd never possessed before. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, Maya found herself surrounded by the unusual group of people who had become her extended family through the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. Richard looked healthy and robust, completely recovered from his cardiac event, and apparently thriving despite the months of legal proceedings and media attention. He'd stepped down as CEO of Blackwood Industries during the investigation, but had been unanimously reinstated by a reformed board of directors once his innocence was conclusively established. "So what's next?" he asked Maya as they watched Emma chase soap bubbles that Mrs. was blowing across the courtyard. Maya fingered her new nursing pin thoughtfully. "I start work at County General on Monday, cardiac ICU." Not exactly a quiet posting for someone who's had enough excitement to last a lifetime. Maya laughed. "I think I've discovered I don't actually want a quiet life. That night in the diner taught me something about myself. I'm good in crisis situations. I like helping people when the stakes are high." Richard nodded approvingly. "And Emma, how's she adjusting to everything?" Maya looked over at her daughter, who was now teaching Agent's 8-year-old son how to catch the biggest soap bubbles without popping them. Emma had handled the media attention and lifestyle changes with remarkable resilience, though Maya had made sure to maintain as much normalcy as possible. They still lived in the same neighborhood, Emma still attended the same school, and Maya had been careful not to let wealth isolate them from the community that had supported them when times were hard. "She's amazing," Maya said. "I think she likes feeling like we're part of something important. She tells her friends her mama helped catch the bad guys." Jonathan Pierce approached them, carrying Emma's backpack and looking remarkably relaxed for someone whose job involved managing security for one of the most high-profile corporate executives in the country. Over the past 6 months, he'd become an unlikely friend to Maya, someone who understood both the burden of protecting others and the complexity of navigating relationships built on extraordinary circumstances. "Maya, there's something Richard and I wanted to discuss with you," Jonathan said. Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. Even though her relationship with Richard had evolved into genuine friendship, she still sometimes felt overwhelmed by his ability to reshape circumstances with casual ease. "What kind of something?" Richard smiled. "Relax, it's good news. How would you feel about heading up a new foundation we're establishing?" Maya frowned. And for the first time since that night in Murphy's diner, Maya actually believed that might be true, accepting that your own life would never be the same again. As the federal agent drove her home through the empty pre-dawn streets, Maya stared out the window and wondered if she would ever see Richard Blackwood again, and what would happen to both of them if she did. What's going on? Richard met her eyes and she saw apology and regret there. "Maya, I haven't been completely honest with you. My name is Richard Blackwood, that part was true. But what I didn't tell you is that I'm the CEO of Blackwood Industries, and 3 hours ago someone tried to murder me."